So, hello everyone, welcome to my session. Today my topic is the history of the United Kingdom and its relationship with Europe before the foundation of the European Union. And as we all know, Britain is very special in Europe. It's a part of Europe, but it's actually not on the European mainland. So therefore, for a long time, British people have identified themselves as British more than European, except for, of course, the Welsh, Scotch and Irish people, because they don't even see themselves as British. So, the Britain was one of the first countries to put forward the pan-Europeanism, but for various reasons it failed to become one of the founding countries of the European Union. And Britain formally joined the EEC in 1972 until the Brexit in 2021. But until now, it has very close relationship with Europe in the economic, political, military, and so many fields. So for today's, I will start from the history of United Kingdoms, talk about it from the Roman Empire until the official foundation of the European Union, and all this topic will come from the perspective of United Kingdoms. So when we talk about the British history, we start with the classical period. Actually, in the 15th BC, Roman general and the future director Julius Caesar launched two separate invasions of British Israel, so neither result in the full Roman occupation of this island. In the 43 AD, the southern Britain became part of the Roman Empire after a period of expansion of the Roman province, including the subjection of the South Wales. Between the 77 and 83 AD, the governor Julius led a series of campaigns which enlarged the province significantly, taking in the North Wales, North Britain, and most of the Scottish land. So let's continue to the early medieval. The early medieval period saw a series of invasions of the Britain by the Germanic-speaking Saxons, beginning in the 5th century. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms were formed, and the wars with British state generally came to cover the territory of the present-day England. In the 9th century, the Vikings conquered most of England. Only the kingdom of Wessex under Alfred the Great survived and even managed to reconquer and unify England for much of the 10th century. And before the new series of Danish raids in the late 10th century and early 11th centuries, planned in the wholesale subjection of the England to Denmark under the Shute the Great. So when we go to the late medieval, in the 1066, William Doug of the Normandy said he was the rightful hero in the English throne, invaded England, and defeated King Harold II at the Battle of Hastings. Proclaiming himself to the King Williams, he strengthened his region by appointing loyal members of the Normandy elite to many positions of authority, building a system of castles across the country, and ordering a cult of the new kingdoms, the domestic box. The late medieval period was characterized by many battles between England and France, coming ahead in the Hundred Years' Wars from which France emerged victorious. And finally, we go to an early modern period. So, when it comes to the modern period, there is a lot of major historical events in this period, such as the English Renaissance, the English Reformation, the Scottish Reformation, the English Civil War, the restoration of Charles II, the Glorious Revolution, the Trade of Union, the Scottish Enlightenment, and the Reformation of the First British Empire. And then we go to the Empire of the Sea Never Set. Actually, the United Kingdom of the Great Britain and Ireland was the sovereign state that existed between the 801 and 1922. It was established by the Act of Union in 800. Actually, it goes through the period of the British Empire century, the Victoria era, the Edward period, the British in the World War I. And actually, it's the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. The Britain played a vital part in the war during this period. Actually, at that time, the Britain is one of the biggest, the largest, and the strongest country in the world. And its foreign policy at that time is gonna be a splendid isolations. So, what is exactly the splendid isolation? Actually, it is a term used to describe the 19th century's British diplomatic practice of avoiding permanent aliens, particularly under the government of Lord Salisbury until the 1885 and 1902. For much of the 19th century, the British sought to maintain the existing balance of the power in Europe while protecting the trade route to its colonies, and especially those connecting to the British Indies through the Suez Canal. So in order to give an official interpretation of this splendid isolation, I try to quote two words from the Foreign Minister of Britain and the Foreign Secretary of Britain. Next, I want to start to introduce the process of the European integration after World War II and before foundation of the European Union and the role of the United Kingdom in it. And first of all, as we all know, the United Kingdom is a monarchy country. Since the Second World War, it has experienced 17 prime ministers, including 11 from the Conservative parties and 6 from the Labour Party. But actually, they have only experienced the 2 monarchy, 1 king and 1 queen. Her Majesty Elizabeth II, the present British Queen, and her father George V. As we all know, the European integration started with the speech with Winston Churchill in the 1946, the Iron Curtain speech with his European dreams. And then when it comes to the 1948, the Treaty of Brussels, this treaty provides for the organization of the military, economic, social, and cultural cooperation among member states, as well as the mutual defense clause. It's an extension of the Treaty of the Dunkirk, the defense agreement between the Britain and France in the previous years. So as the member, there is the Belgium, France, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and the other member of the Western Union. So as we can see, actually this flag is the Western Union flag. And then we go to the 1950s, the Declaration of Schuman. It's proposed placing the French and the Western German production of coal and steel under a single authority that will later be open to the other European countries. The goal was to specific relationship between the France and the Western Germany, particularly through the general political integration, which would be achieved by creating a common interest. So when we come to the Treaty of Paris in the 1951, the treaty was intended to bring a diplomatic and economic stability in Western Europe after the Second World War. Some of the main enemies during the war were now sharing the production of the coal and steel, the key resource which previously had been central to the war effort. So the main goal of this treaty was to create the Europe Coal and Steel Community, the ECSC. The members can be the Belgium, the France, Italian, Luxembourg, Netherlands, and West Germany. And when we come to the 1985, the Treaty of Rome, this treaty proposed the progressive reduction of the custom duties and the establishment of the custom unions to create a single market for goods, labor, service, and capital across the member states to create a common agricultural policy, a common transport policy, and a European social fund. Actually, it's to create a European Economic Community, or we can say EEC. So as the member, like the Treaty of Paris, it's Belgium, France, Italian, Luxembourg, Netherlands, and West Germany. So without the United Kingdom, actually Britain wanted to join the EEC. And in 1957, the Prime Minister Harry Maclean believed that Britain should join the economy and become its center. But in 1961, the United Kingdom, the Denmark, and Ireland submitted applications for joining together. And the French President Charles de Gaulle simply said no, because he believed that the United Kingdom is resistant to European integration after joining the EEC and may propose the threat to the France statute and influence. Moreover, the United Kingdom has close relationship with the United States. Perhaps it will lead to the expansion of US power in Europe. So, in the 1963, apparently the France voted against UK's application to enter the European Union. In the 1977, Charles de Gaulle believed that Britain's resistance to building the European community is deeply ingrained and that the British economic situation is not compatible with Europe and it must be transformed before it can be considered for acceptance. In the 1969, after the Charles de Gaulle resigned and stepped down, the Britons applied for the third time to enter the European Union. And in 1971, the Prime Minister Edward House signed in the Brussels in the draft to join the European Community. In the 1972, the United Kingdom became official member of the EEC. So someone can be a little bit confused because of the name of the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, the Cabinet, the Minister, in the general election. So I'm going to show you a little video to explain the political system in Britain.
The United Kingdom is a parliamentary democracy. Government is voted into power by the people to act in their interests. The UK is also a constitutional monarchy, although Queen Elizabeth II has limited powers and is politically impartial. Parliament itself is divided into two houses, the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Both make laws, scrutinise government and debate current issues. The two-chamber system is designed to act as a check and balance for both houses. The countdown to a British general election starts with the Prime Minister paying a ceremonial visit to the Queen to formalise the dissolution of Parliament. This used to be a constitutional necessity, but is now purely a courtesy call following the introduction of fixed-term parliaments in 2011. A political party that wins an overall majority in the House of Commons, with 326 seats or more, at a general election forms the new government, and its leader becomes Prime Minister. If there's no clear winner, one of the two biggest parties, the Conservatives or Labour, could make a formal deal with a smaller party or parties, such as the Liberal Democrats or the Eurosceptic UKIP party.
So after the introduction of the political system in Britain, let me introduce some major parties in Britain. The first of all is going to be the Labour Party. The party was founded in the 90s and having grown out of the trade union movement and socialist party of the 19th century. The Labour Party is a central-left political party, historically influenced by Keynes economic. This party wants the government intervention in the economy, the redistribution of the wealth, and want to increase the rights for the workers. They want to create a welfare state, including a political funded healthcare. And after World War II, the Labour Party adopted an anti-European common market position. But in 1983, under the leadership of the party leader at that time, it transferred into a pro-Euro party. But opposite aim for the Conservative Party, they promote to join EEC in the 1960s. As you can remember, since the Margaret Thatcher came to power, it has become more and more suspicious to Europe, so it's going to be a little bit anti-Europe. So for the Conservative Party, it was founded in the 1834 from the Tory Party, and it was one of the two dominant political parties in the 19th century. This party was generally adopted the liberal economic politics, favored the free market economic, including measures such as the deregulations, privatization, and democratizations since the 1980s. And this party is a British Unionist Party, so it's opposing the Irish unification, the Scottish and Welsh independence, and is generally critical of the devolutions. So why I choose these two parties? Because in all general elections since 1922, these two parties has either the government party or the opposition parties. So something actually is quite funny is that the British want to go out the EEC in 1975, so there is a Brexit in 1975. So actually, they're not the first time to do that job. In the 1974, the British general election, the government of Prime Minister Harold Wilson was in power. The Labour Party promised in the campaign platform to renegotiate the term of British membership with EEC. So, the government had a serious disagreement on the issue of Brexit. In the cabinet vote on March 18, 1975, 60 ministers supposed to stay in the EEC, and the 7 want to a Brexit, and even the Conservative Party is divided into two factions. But actually, for those who want to stay in the EEC, because they think the domestic economy in the UK continue to be struggling, and the inflation and employment rate is going to be sky high, so we have to stay in the EEC to help us to go through these difficulties. And for those who want to Brexit, like the Minister of the Industry, the bank claimed that enter the common market directly lead to a sharp increase in the food price and the loss of the 500,000 jobs in the UK. But fortunately, on the day of the referendum on the June 5, 1975, around 67% of the British people support to stay in Europe. So when it comes to the late 1980s and the first half of the 1990s, Jacques Delors, the president of the European Commission, wanted the acceleration of the European integration, such as giving the Brussels more legislative and executive powers, making the European Parliament the legislative body of Europe. But at that time, the current Prime Minister of the Britain, Thatcher, she believes that the Britain's contribution is greater to the gain, and she is more resistant to the EEC, which is increasingly dominated by the German, and Europe, which has an increasing clear goal of accelerating economic and political integration. So, on October 1913 and 1990s, such a direct response to the call for European integration in the House of Commons. She said no, no, no. And this journal will go to an end. After the signing of the Maastricht Treaty in 1992, the European Union was officially established. So what's going to be like for Britain in the European Union? So I will leave time to my classmate to finish this topic. And I will thank you for your attention and see you next time.